police constables, people or officers who joined at constabulary level. During their time, they went to school and studied for a degree. They have been arguing that they need to be taken straight to inspectorate. And there has been a long court battle. As soon as that court matter is settled by the apex court, we'll implement whatever decision will come from our judiciary. With regard to that matter going forward, we will implement the recommendations of the Maraga Task Force, which creates two-tier police service where you can serve in the lower ranks, and the academic requirements are different. You serve from constable to senior sergeant, or you enter the police service at inspectorate level if you are a graduate as a cadet, so that we professionalize a little more the police service and also expedite leadership generation through cadets who can assume responsibility as OCSs and commanders at county level and so forth, to avoid a situation where you have officers seeking to extend their time in office at senior levels simply because of a lack of generation of younger commanders. With regard to the motivation, we are working with the National Police Service Commission, and if I am approved, I will proceed with this discussion to provide a clearer policy on promotions, transfers, and some form of reward system which will help motivate our officers. At the moment, before I left office, we were implementing the 3-year transfer policy. I think we were at 45% compliance because of the logistical and the financial implications. If I am reappointed, if I am approved by this House, I will complete that 3-year transfer policy to make sure that it happens. And also, we will have a fast-track promotion arrangement for officers who do very well. For example, if you're a county police commander, you help in reducing crime, you help in fighting femicide, you help in fighting you have certain targets which you meet. You should be promoted faster than somebody else who is in the same level, but their performance indicators are in the negative. Finally, I've been asked 2 questions by the Honorable Mishimboko. The first one is on femicide. It is true, the cases of femicide we are seeing are worrying for the country, and it's also true we have critical gaps, especially at the lower levels of our policing and security apparatus, both the National Intelligence Service, the National Police Service, and also Ngao. And those are things that we need to work on to avoid situations like what we are seeing. The incident that happened in Kware is quite devastating, quite a grave breach of the security of our women, and it's something that I'm taking with all seriousness. Finally, what plans will I have if I am approved by this House to ensure that we do not have loss of life when citizens exercise their right under Article 37? I will be finalizing for publication the guidelines under the Public Order Act, the one I explained earlier, not to take away the light, but to facilitate, to create an environment where it can be enjoyed, to create responsibility on those who are having protests. Because if you say you have a protest to Parliament, for example, and the designated area for protests can only accommodate 1,000 protesters, you cannot say, I want 2 million protesters outside Parliament, because it's not feasible. So we'll have to give those guidelines so that as Kenyans can enjoy these rights while respecting the rights of others in accordance with the Constitution. I submit.
Sharia?
Thank you, Chairman. CS nominee, in the court of public opinion and in some independent surveys done in this country, the Ministry of Interior and National Administration has been identified as the one with the highest prevalence of corruption in this country. How do you intend to address this menace if approved?
Let's take Honorable Russ also.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Professor, when a Kenyan reads a Gazette notice of Kenya Gazette, they will tend to believe that is the true reflection of a policy direction from government. In March this year, you closed the Ilo gold mine in Moyale, that it will be closed for 30 days following the skirmishes that had taken place. But since then, over 30 lives have been lost, including that of security officers. That particular area has turned out to be a black market for mineral entrepreneurs, and the citizenry have generally lost faith in government and also in the security agency. My question to you, if the House approves your nomination, what is it that you are likely to do to reaffirm the community's faith in that the government does what it says it will do, and also that the security of that area, because Dabel has the inhabitants community, that the security is restored. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, those of us who come from the border areas, we have very porous borders. There's influx of arms, contraband, drugs, and also illegal immigrants. But what we are experiencing also is so many roadblocks and checkpoints. Some actually are rent seekers as opposed to for purposes of security. Professor, if the House approves your nomination, what is it that you are likely to do to ensure there is security for Kenya, but also the communities that are traversing or traveling on those roads are not, to an extent, inhumanly disadvantaged? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Professor.
Mr. Speaker, with regard to the question by the Honorable Sharia, it is true corruption is a big cancer in the National Police Service, in the public sector of our country, the 2 levels of government and the 3 arms of government. In our assessment of national security threats that are existential in nature, I have said earlier we have identified 5 existential threats to our country's future. Terrorism and violent extremism is one of them. Banditry and other organized crimes is the second. The third one is the problem of narcotic drugs, psychotropic substances, and all that goes with that. The fourth one is climate change and how it is creating disruption of livelihoods and breeding conflicts among communities. The fifth one is corruption. And therefore, going forward, if I'm reappointed, I am going to escalate programs, policies, and measures to eradicate corruption within the organs of the national security that are within the Ministry of Interior, but also propose for the rest of the country, the rest of the government and public sector, measures that can help us secure the country, because it's no longer an issue of the corruption by the police. It's an issue of corruption being able to actually threaten the country's future. And therefore, corruption is top 5 of our national security threat. Lastly, I've been asked about by the Honorable Didoraso about Hilo. It is true. Hilo gold mine in Dabel, Moyale, we closed in March for 30 days, but we've extended those orders. We have identified that area as a disturbed area because we lost some people there who were fighting over mineral rights, mainly illegal miners who had come, even some of them from other countries. So we closed it on security considerations. We are in talks with the Ministry of Mining to see how an orderly resumption of mining activities can happen. I was there physically in June. I was planning to go back in July before this happened. In the interim, we have lost a few people because of illegal activities around there, even as we speak, on a very low scale though. We even lost 2 police officers in the last 2 weeks. So as soon as if I am approved, as soon as I'm in office, I will prioritize the Dabel issue to ensure orderly resumption of lawful mining activities to the benefit of the communities that are there. With regard to borders, the multi-agency roadblocks we have, especially the one in Archer's Post, the one in Mombasa, the Garseni Malindi Highway, all the multi-agency roadblocks are working well, including the Kanyonyo one, the one on Garissa Mwingi, Nairobi Highway. What the criminals have done, those who smuggle arms and aliens and drugs, they are using alternative routes. What am I going to do? The same multi-agency approach that we have used on the main highways. We will increase our surveillance and put multi-agency effort, not necessarily roadblocks, but patrol teams by our special forces on the alternative routes that drug traffickers, human traffickers, and other criminals are using to harm our country. I submit.
Honorable Mule.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, nominee. Honorable Speaker, I want to ask Professor that he came to be the Minister for Interior after the last election and be vetted by this committee and approved, and understanding very clearly the economic policy of the Kenya Kwanza policy of bottom-up economic transformation. You have been in office, and I want to bring you to your attention that the National Assembly put up regulations for private security firms to be regulated properly. And in the view of the better or the bottom up, it was to create employment. But in the time you have been in the office, this industry has suffered tremendous losses whereby you have not given them any regulations. You have not restored order and system in the private sector. And I would wish to know exactly what are you going to do. These private companies have been providing employment to more than almost 1.5 million Kenyans, and they could do better if the government enables proper regulations to create that. And you revoked the license of the Private Security Regulatory Authority, whereby 9 companies plus in this country have not been able to create employment. Are you in the tandem of the idea of creating employment
or making sure that there is no more employment and reducing the tax collection for the government, because that is in your docket whereby you need to create environment. And being the last person, Mr. Speaker,